Remember those days when the pandemic was peaking and thousands of people fled the big cities? Well, times have changed. With the pandemic receding and normal life returning, folks are moving back and rents are going way, way up. When Gabby Freed moved into this one-bedroom apartment on Manhattan's Upper West Side a year ago, the landlord made her an offer she couldn't refuse. A special pandemic rate, $1,945 a month.
I knew potentially I'd have to move out in a year given if the rent increases were too much, but I didn't expect it to be what it was.
So 1 year later, how much was the rent hike? A whopping 41% to $2,745.
When I opened it up and I saw an $800 increase, I immediately started crying.
The 27-year-old dance teacher says she has no choice but to find a new apartment, and she's not alone. Post-pandemic rents are rising in major cities across the country. Here in New York City, rents have shot up 33% in the past year, almost double the national average. Stressed out apartment dwellers are taking to TikTok to air their grievances.
$500. $500.
From $4,200 to $6,200.
I move out next week.
My rent is going up $250. Yikes.
Roommates Taylor Asaro and Christina Gallo got a great deal when they moved into their two-bedroom apartment in downtown Manhattan last year. But their rent just went up from $3,100 a month to $4,095. That's a $995 increase.
We just screamed. We were in absolute disbelief.
The 27-year-olds, who both have corporate jobs, are dog walking and babysitting as side hustles to afford the new rent.
There's not much room for negotiating if you're a tenant right now. You basically have to step up if you like something, and you got to pay market value, which is higher than previous market value has ever been.
Seeing everyone is going through the same thing and hearing the amount of people that have very similar stories to what we're going through does kind of help the burn a little bit, because you're like, okay, at least I'm not alone in it.
Times are getting hard. And people don't realize how good they got it. I'm just gonna let everyone know that if I regret ever leaving New York City, sure, in many cases, but in all reality, getting older, I had to be more realistic and settle where I'm at. When I was last in New York City, it was back in 2018. That was about 4 to 5 years ago. And since then, my life has completely changed for better. I've been growing, I've been doing my thing, getting on my grind, and I didn't have any fallbacks. And New York City is the city that never sleeps, but at the same time, it's the city that will suck you dry and put people in poverty. You're being put in poverty for a lifestyle, for Sex in the City, for your favorite TV shows, the advertisements. New York City is the advertising icon. Oh, you can make it big out here. Yeah, you can make a lot of money in the city if you have the degree, you know the right people. But most people, the typical average person that has a high school diploma, GED, or a dropout, most of the time you're not gonna make it. There are cases now where people that moved out of the city during the pandemic, that were living paycheck to paycheck, they lost their jobs. They're now trying to move back into the city, applying to subsidized housing or Section 8. And the thing is, with subsidized housing and Section 8, you're required to stay on the minimum income in order to be eligible to keep that apartment. If you make even over a certain amount, you basically gotta go, or in some cases, they push up the rent to match the income that you're making, probably up to 30-40%, from my own understanding and my own experience, because I used to live under housing, but it was under my parents, my mom, okay? And during this time when I lived with my mom, I had to compensate because, living with your parents, it's understandable when you're a grown adult, they expect you to also be responsible. And I was responsible, you know? And it taught me to have my own. It pushed me to have my own. And that was a big motivation and motivational factor. So I'm thankful to life humbling me to teach me the responsibility of what it's like to be on my own and being an adult. Now I'm taking bigger responsibilities. I'm saving more money. I'm moving smart. I'm not moving to where I'm risking my sanity, my wife's sanity, and my children and my finances. And I don't want to do that. You have to live smart and move smart. For those of you who are living in New York City right now, I applaud to you if you made it this far to see 2022. Especially for those of you who has your careers together, who has yourselves together, your lives together. I understand that, right? If you're even blessed enough to even find a one-bedroom apartment or a two-bedroom apartment, paying $1,500 to $1,800 a month, you're very blessed, because the apartments and houses down in the suburbs, it's a lot cheaper, especially me living in South Carolina right now. But the only downside is that you have to contribute into a vehicle, a car. You're going to need a car down in the suburbs. That's what you really have to depend on. Ubers and taxi drivers are out here, but you more so have to look out for yourself. There's no MTA transportation. The bus system down here in South Carolina, it sucks. It sucks garbage. I even could tell from my own experience driving around, looking around. A lot of people that takes the bus down here, the bus comes at random times, or sometimes there are cases where the bus don't even show up at all. The transportation system down in South Carolina is poor. Compared to the city, people has no choice in most cases but to depend on the transportation system. Crime is running rampant in the subway systems, on the buses, on the trains, because most people are in there. It's overly populated, and it's more easier for people to be a target, especially at night when walking alone. Because most people in the city, let's just be honest and keep it real, they don't have a car. The parking is a nightmare. There's more people in the city, more crime. There's higher rates of crime being taken advantage of because people are still wearing face masks. So it's harder to identify the criminals. And this is why there's also an increase in crime, because of poverty. And due to poverty, that is pushing people more on their breaking point to want to rob other people. And the crime rate is not as crazy outside of the city. It's only in major cities where you know most of the crime happens. People has access to guns, has access to drugs. The city is booming. And once the city is booming and it has a business and there's more people are going to push to do a crime. People are not going to push to do any crimes where it's a suburb. They're going to have to drive. They're going to need to know someone to drive. It's going to be harder for them to commute. It's going to be harder for criminals to move around. This is the reason why in certain states, you don't hear about crime like that. It rarely happens. And when it does, it's because of a family, a friend, and most of the cases, that's about it. That's what you normally hear as the norm. So yeah, moving out of the city, I have no regrets, because looking from the outside in, there was a time where I was thinking and having plans to move back with my wife, and we both came to the conclusion that, hey, look, the city life, it would have been nice to just visit, but living in the city, it's going to be a struggle. We have to think realistically. The traffic is bad. It would be a nightmare to find parking. We have kids in the end of the day. The school system is getting rampant. There's teenagers and children getting shot, beat up, hit. There's a rise in a lot of homeless people, sane people, random slashings, subway attacks. And people really want to hang on to the city, saying, oh, I love this city. The city is my life. People are so used to the city. So they make it seem like New York is the bomb. That it's the American dream. living in New York City. Struggling is not the American dream. There's this thing now where people are being glorified to struggle instead of just living an easy life. What are you accomplishing by saying that, oh, I've struggled or I've been through the worst? There are some people who actually gets praised or glorified for going through bad situations and still struggling in bad situations. Like it's a competition or of who got it worse. The real question is, when are you going to make it? When are you going to make something out of yourself? When are you going to think bigger? Be smarter. The last time I was in the city, I had people, customers I used to take care of at some of my old jobs that said that they're even moving out of the city. And this was before the pandemic, because they said living as a roommate is too expensive in the city still. You have to get roommates. People you don't even really know like that. Just so you could afford an apartment in the city? Are you freaking kidding me? Well, I gotta get roommates. Getting roommates is the norm, but getting a house in the city, because the price and demand, it's too high and too expensive for people to even afford a mortgage home in the city. You're basically committing suicide on your pockets and your finances if you're looking into leasing a house or even renting to own a house in New York City. That is just impossible. Unless you're like Jeff Bezos or you're making over 100K a year, you're a doctor or something like that, or a lawyer. Even then, you'll be struggling. The rent and everything and the cost of living in the city is too high. And being the fact that the taxes is very high in the city, businesses is going to have to increase the prices on milk, the prices on food, the prices on their rent is increasing, so they're going to have to increase everything in their products, the taxes, gas, everything. But if you go outside of the city where the wages are lower, the cost of living is more cheaper, you may not have the bodegas or the bacon, egg, and cheese, those delis near you, right? But at least you could have more of a peace of mind. You have more in your pocket. You're not struggling as much. You're actually getting by. You're making it. You're making it as me. You're not living paycheck to paycheck struggling. There is housing in Section 8 down here in South Carolina as well, right? But living down here, the cost of living is not as bad as it is in the city. It's not a price or high in demand, because it's a demand for people to want to live in the city and move in the city. This is the reason why the cost of living is increasing, and people don't mind paying $10, $20 for a cup of coffee at your local Starbucks. People don't mind spending $30, $40, $50 on a movie ticket just to watch a movie in a movie theater. People don't mind spending over $2,000 a month on a one-bedroom apartment. It may be less than 900 square feet, but because of, it's New York City, they're willing to pay that much. It's a shame. I used to think like this. I was even thinking like that, and I had to come to a realization. I have a family to think about. I'm not trying to commit suicide to my pockets and struggle to go back and think that this is the life for me. No. Who am I going to complain to? When your walk is with God and you're living smart, because even God said to be smart and full of knowledge, you have to live right and live smart. You can't blame God over stupid choices that you chose to make out of selfishness, because God does not like selfish people. And we already know Jesus is the door, okay? Life is about always giving and knowing for the fact that you're humble enough to know that you're going to be blessed and taken care of at the same time, okay? The more you give, the more you know you're going to get back. Not everyone thinks like that. I could save that for another topic, but all realization, right? The cost of living in the city, it's a price and demand issue. There's New York City is being advertised, and people are still being sold this false narrative that you're going to make it out there in the city. And when there's people that are still leasing, renting out apartments, living under roommates. I understand there are some people who grew up in the city out of poor circumstances. There are some people in the city who can't afford to move out right now. There are some people in the city who are just trying to get themselves together in order to move out of the city. Thank God, the time when I was last in the city, I got myself together with my wife. The time when we moved out of the city, we first moved upstate New York. Completely different atmosphere. The cost of living was a lot cheaper, but it was a lot easier to get by. It was less stressful. It was not fast paced. There's a reason why so many people in the city is fast paced. They're aggressive. They act like they're in a hurry somewhere. It's because the cost of living. People are stressed. They're struggling. They want to make sure they're early for that job. The traffic is bad. People are all on edge, and just because everybody's all on edge in the city, most cases there's going to be crime as well because the cost of living is high and most people can't afford to even get by. So it's easier for people to just rob because more population, more people, more money, more opportunities. More people are out at night, more targets. There are women who are still going out, living a nightlife in the New York City, and they're thinking everything's going to be okay. Just recently, there was a case where there was a woman, she was out about 3 to 4 a.m. in the morning, drunk. She was going to her apartment after getting out the Uber, thinking she was safe. She ended up getting slashed and killed. And this was in a nice neighborhood. Shake my freaking head. You cannot be that stupid to go outside. May she rest in peace. But let this be a lesson learned for people to not be that stupid to think that, oh, I could be a city girl. I could live my life, be alone, single, have fun. You're just asking for something to happen. I'm sorry. May she rest in peace, but you have to be smarter than that. If you know the crime rate is bad at night, especially in the city, what makes you think that you're going to be 100% safe at night? I even was going to feel unsafe or unsure that, if my wife worked during the day and I'm working at night, why would it be okay for me to also risk my life? And there could be a day where I can't make it home because of the gun violence on the street. There's a rise in gang wars for a reason too. The crime in the city it increased everywhere. The Bronx, certain parts in Brooklyn, Queens, even in Manhattan. It's not just bad areas. There's also good areas that are now becoming a war zone. This is not to scare people, but living beyond your means, the luxury, putting yourself in debt because you want to live that city, Sex in the City lifestyle is stupid, and it's beyond me. Some people has a heavy attachment to the city, and they know it. Some people don't want to change, or they don't want to have the work to start over. But I had to start over, and guess what? At the end of the day, as time went by, I feel like it was worth it. It was worth the move. I have more money saved in my pocket. I'm getting by, it's less stress. I don't gotta worry about someone trying to kill me. I mind my business, and a lot of people mind their business too. Everybody's free. You're not around other people. It's not stressful. It's not a stressful environment. You're less prone to crime. You could just get by on the car at night, go to a certain store with a less populated crime rate, and no one is not going to bother you. In the city, it's the complete opposite. This is why so many people are on edge. The rent is high. The cost of living is high. Everything's expensive in the city. Nothing's cheap. And one of the cheapest things that you can find in the city is gone in a minute. It's a price and a high demand issue. The marketers notice. The media notice. We all know it. This is Woken Up here. Peace out. Let me know what you think.